All right, good to go.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. I ask Allah to grant us sincere intentions. Ameen. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Ali Imran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. In this ayah, Allah Ta'ala, He tells us to hold on to the rope of Allah. The rope of Allah here is referring to this deen of ours. Okay, Islam. Allah is commanding us to remain steadfast to the proper aqidah and to remain steadfast in our actions in terms of adhering to the Sharia, to make sure we don't go beyond the boundaries that Allah has set for us. And then He says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, which means do not divide. In this ayah, Allah is encouraging us to be united. And tomorrow, as many of you know, is the day of Arafah. Okay, in fact, by now, over there, it's already Saturday. Well, technically it's Saturday here too, because it's after Maghrib. But over there, it's probably morning by now. Okay, and the people at Hajj, they will go to Arafah, beginning when Dhuhr time comes in, is when the window opens for them to be there. And being in Arafah is one of the biggest signs of how united this ummah really is. When you hear Muslims talk, they always talk about the need for unity, the need for solidarity. People are always complaining about how divided we are and things like that. But the truth of the matter is, we're not nearly as divided as all that talk makes it seem. And one of the clearest signs of how united we are is Arafah. When you go there during Hajj time and you look, you will see people from many countries, hundreds perhaps, of countries. You'll see people speaking many languages, hundreds perhaps, of languages. You will see old people and young people. You will see men and you will see women. You will see healthy people and you will see sick people. You'll see dark people and you'll see light people. But all of them will be gathered there for one purpose. They're all united by what? By Islam, by this deen of ours. It unites us. So we shouldn't let idle talk convince us that the Muslims are actually divided. And for sure, you shouldn't let people use something like madhabs. You know, people, they want to say madhabs divide us. Like, the madhabs don't divide us. Historically, these madhabs have been practiced for many, many, many centuries. And the Muslims have been united all of this time, not divided. I mean, there were maybe a couple periods where we were divided. But for the most part, we've been united during all of this time. So it's not true that madhabs divide us. Okay, the madhabs don't stop us from going to Arafah. The madhabs don't change what time we're at Arafah. The madhabs don't change what we say while we're at Arafah. All of those people, regardless of what madhab they're on, they're all saying, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. Okay, we're united in word, we're united in deed, and we're united in our hearts, in our belief, in terms of why we're there, who we're worshiping, and why we're worshiping. So I want to say that this day of Arafah is an important day. It's an important day for those who are there, because for those who are there, it's a time for forgiveness. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the most likely day for a person's du'as to be answered is the day of Arafah. Talk about the people who are there, the people who are at Arafah. Their du'as are very likely to be answered, the du'as that they make at that time, because it's a time when the blessings and the mercies of Allah are descending in abundance in that place. MashaAllah. So Arafah is very important. It's important for those who are there because of the du'as being answered and the forgiveness that they're given. It's important for us over here because of the symbol that it represents of our unity. The reminder that we are all one body. The reminder, as it says in that same ayah, the continuation of the ayah, after it says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, it says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. Allah says, and remember the blessing that Allah bestowed upon you, which is the blessing of Islam. He says, and that you were like enemies of one another. And Allah made you like brothers. Okay? How did we become like brothers? Because we're united in the deen. Okay? So Arafah, the day of Arafah, it's that sign. The sign of our unity, which is an important thing for all of us here. But I feel that Arafah has other significance, beyond just the symbolism of unity, beyond the forgiveness that comes to those who are there, beyond just the greatness of the day. You know, the day of Arafah is the best day of the year. Of all the days in the Islamic calendar, the best night of the year is the night of power, which comes during Ramadan, and the best day of the year is the day of Arafah. This is why it's sunnah for people who are not on Hajj to fast that day. And fast lasts when? Is it something we do at night? Is fasting something we do in the night? No, fasting is something we do in the day. Because the daytime of Arafah is the best daytime of the year. To the point that the Prophet ﷺ said the one who fasts that day, he has the sins of the past year and the coming year forgiven. So I strongly encourage all of us to fast that day, which is tomorrow. Which means even right now, we can make our intention to fast this day, which is coming tomorrow. And then we begin fasting at Fajr time. But I find also in Arafah there's more symbolism, more reminders than that. And that is the size of the crowd. The sheer number of people that are at Arafah. The heat. You know, when I made Hajj was in December. It was hot, but not that hot. It was kind of, nice. These folks making Hajj in June. It's going to be blazing over there. And when you see the size of the crowd, and you see people going all back and forth, some people going this way, some people going that way, everybody concerned with what they're concerned with. Some people trying to get to the bathroom, some people trying to get back from the bathroom, some people trying to get to Mount Rahmah so they can stand in a certain spot, some people trying to get into the masjid that's there. You know, you got people going different ways, some people looking for their family members and the other members of their group. You got everybody going their different ways, doing their thing in a huge crowd when it's hot. Doesn't that remind you of something? Doesn't that remind you of something? That's what the Day of Judgment is going to be like. Right? When the Day of Judgment, the crowd is going to be huge because it's going to be every human that ever lived. And all of the jinn that ever lived. Even the animals are going to be brought back on the Day of Judgment. So the crowd is going to be humongous. Humongous. And everyone's going to be going about concerned only about themselves. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. It says, O people, fear your Lord, meaning have taqwa, meaning obey him. Okay, it doesn't mean just be afraid. Okay, it don't mean be shaking in your boots, oh, I'm afraid. It means have that kind of fear that keeps you in obedience to him. A fear that motivates you to do what you're commanded to do and avoid what you're commanded to avoid. Allah is saying have that kind of fear because that's what will protect you on the Day of Judgment. He says, truly the quaking that happens when the world ends is an incredible thing. It says on that day, women who are nursing their babies will ignore the baby that they were just nursing at their own breast. Women that are pregnant are going to, immediately whatever's in their womb is going to come out. They're going to miscarry whatever's in there. It's coming out immediately. And you're going to see people going back and forth as if they're drunk, but they're not drunk. But rather it's because the punishment of Allah is severe. Like the prospect of that punishment, of hellfire. And you know a portion of hell is visible. On the day of judgment, the place where people are gathered to be judged, you can see what's called an uno, like a neck of hellfire. It's dragged there, so you can see like a piece of hellfire. And they see that piece of it. And the terror that comes into them from seeing how just severe that punishment is, they forget everything else. All they care about is how can they be saved. They don't care about their own children, their own parents, their own brothers. All they care about is what will stop them from going there. And I feel that the day of Arafah is a reminder of what's coming. When you see those people there, I mean, it's only a small portion. The actual day of judgment is going to be way bigger, right? Way more severe. Everything on the day of judgment is going to be far more, in scale and magnitude greater. But still, it's a reminder. It's a reminder. So I hope that we get the most out of this day. I want us tomorrow, inshallah, to wake up fasting. I want us to fast today, not just because of the reward we get, the forgiveness, but also because of the discipline it teaches. Fasting teaches a person discipline, especially when it's a day that we're not obligated to do. Then that means if you don't feel like continuing, you can always just stop fasting. Or at least according to the Shafi'is, they say. Not all the madhabs agree that you can interrupt the fast once you start it. But according to the Shafi'is, we say if you start a fast, you can break it. And among the evidences for that is a hadith in which our Prophet ﷺ, he said that the one who's fasting an optional fast, he is Amirul Nafsi. He's like the commander of himself. If he wants to, he can keep fasting, and if he wants to, he can break it. And he very specifically said you're allowed to break a fast. So yeah, you're fasting a day that you know you're not obligated to do, you know you have the option to stop, but you choose not to, you choose to see it through. This teaches one discipline. Okay, and that discipline will benefit you in many phases of life. It benefits you every day because the person is not going to win this test that we're in, which is our life. You're not going to pass this test unless you have discipline. Because temptation is everywhere. Temptation is all around us, pretty much all the time, especially in this country. Okay? If you don't have discipline, if you don't have self-control, then you're going to be drowning in sins. So let us fast tomorrow to train ourselves in discipline, to try to get that reward, to try to get the benefit of forgiveness. But let us be mindful that the real goal is to be successful in the day of judgment. And this day is just one reminder of that, mashallah. So that's just a few words about the day of Arafah, mashallah. It's one of the great days of the year, for sure. But there are other things that I feel we should also talk about on this day. As always, I get on my soapbox. Whenever I'm here, I always talk about certain things. And among them is the importance of religious knowledge. I very firmly believe that most of the problems we face as a ummah are problems that will not be solved until the level of knowledge of the Muslims is higher. I'm not saying that knowledge is the solution. I'm saying knowledge is the first step. After that, each problem will have its own solution. But it has to begin with knowledge, because it's only with knowledge that you know what's permissible and what's not. It's only with knowledge that you can evaluate the potential solutions to see, is it in line with the Sharia or is it not in line with the Sharia? And that's true for the big problems that Ummah faces, and it's true for the smaller problems that only you yourself face. And you got to know what is permissible and what's not permissible. Okay, if you're just going through this life doing things because they're normal, not questioning things just because they're normal, then you may be in for a rude awakening when you wake up on the day of judgment. I encounter a lot of Muslims who don't know that there's rules for buying things and selling things. I encounter a lot of Muslims. They don't know. I mean, we all know it's permissible to buy things and sell things, but there's rules. How do you buy something? How do you do it? Like literally. Is it permissible for us to use credit cards? Is it permissible for us to use debit cards? Is it permissible for us to use Cash App? or Zelle, or PayPal? Is it permissible to buy things online? Okay, there are things that Muslims just started doing, and many of them never asked the question. And I'm saying we can't expect to be successful in this life if we just do stuff without first asking. You know, Imam al-Bukhari, he started his book, Sahih al-Bukhari, his very first chapter, says a chapter of knowledge before action. Okay? It's part of our deen to first learn how to do something in accordance with the Sharia before you attempt to do it. You don't act first without knowledge and then just tell yourself, well, if it turns out that it's haram, you know, I'll just make tawbah. But do you know that tawbah sometimes requires you to fix what you did wrong? Tawbah isn't always just something you say. It's not always just 2 rak'ahs. You know, if you steal something from somebody, tawbah means you got to return what you stole. You don't just say, oh, I repent. You return what you stole. And if you buy something and you used a transaction that wasn't valid, you need to return what you bought. So if you're just going around buying stuff, and according to the Sharia, you're not even the true owner of those things because the transaction wasn't valid, you need to return all that stuff. Are you even keeping track of what you bought by this method or that method so that you can return it if you need to? What about your very house, the home that you're living in or renting? Did you acquire that in the Sharia permissible way? Because if not, you need to ask yourself if the salats you pray in that house are going to get reward or not. These things, they're serious. And they can pile up over time. And the simple way to solve it is to ask, to learn. And then you will be able to buy things in a way that's valid. Okay, there are opinions among the madhabs that will permit most of what we do, if we do it the right way. You know, my children, for example, they see me all the time doing things that look crazy, you know, because I'm just trying to be Sharia compliant. They see, for example, when I go to a restaurant that sells food, they see I don't purchase the food. In most cases, what I do is I give a donation to the place, and then I say, if you want, you can donate to me some food. You know, I do it as donations to avoid doing an official purchase contract, because a purchase contract has conditions which are not going to be met, usually. Sometimes I do an actual purchase, but when I do an actual purchase, I make sure I look at all the food first. And I don't pay first, which is what most stores want you to do. They want you to place an order and pay, and then when the food is cooked, they give it to you. But according to the Sharia, you can't pay, you can't buy something until you know what you're buying. You have to see it with your eyes, or it has to be well described in words. And cooked food cannot be well described in words. Okay, it's not possible to describe well food that's cooked. Like if you get a chicken breast, a boneless chicken breast that weighs 1 pound, you know, that's easy to describe if it's uncooked. You can just say it's a boneless chicken breast that weighs 1 pound, you know? But once it's been cooked, now you have to describe the amount that it's cooked and how done it is, okay? And meat doesn't cook uniformly. Like this part of the chicken is going to be more cooked than that part of the chicken. It's going to be more cooked than that part of the chicken. The outside is going to be more cooked than the inside. You're not going to be able to describe it with words. You're not going to be able to. Okay, which is why you have to look at it and see if you find it acceptable before you purchase it. Okay? And how many of these stores allow you to, well, how many of them will wait until the food is cooked and then open it up and let you look at it before you pay? Some of them let you. I do it at many places myself because they know me now. They know I'm going to look at it. They know I'm not going to run out without paying or something like that. You know, but they just look at me, oh, here's that guy again that does all this extra stuff, you know. But I'm only doing what the Sharia requires, you know. All of us need to find out what are the rules for buying things. You know, I once came here, I remember I was downstairs in this building. I gave somebody the example as I was telling them, you know, the transactions, we do have rules. And I said, you know, if somebody comes in here with a sack on his shoulder looking like Santa Claus, there's a big bag of stuff, and he puts the bag in the floor, and he says, I'll sell you everything in this bag for $50. But he won't let you look in the bag. Okay? You don't know what's in the bag. He just says, I'll sell you everything in the bag for $50. I said, Islamically, you're not allowed to accept that deal. You know? Because you don't know what's in the bag. Okay, this is fraud. Okay, Islamically, this is fraud. You're not allowed to accept that deal. And everybody down there was laughing because nobody here would accept that deal. Like, we all know better than to buy like a mystery box, even though kids love that stuff. I'm serious. You go to like Target or Walmart or some place that sells toys now. A lot of toys now come in, there's like a mystery box. Like, it's a surprise. You see what you get. And kids want to get it. Well, Islamically, you can't get that one because you don't know what's in it. So here's the thing. Most of us recognize that in that mystery box example, that's not a good deal. We recognize that that's not an upfront, upright transaction. Because one side knows what it's getting. That guy knows he's going to get $50. But whoever gets the bag, he doesn't know what he's getting. He doesn't know if what's in there is even worth $50. Right? So we know not to take that deal. But how many of us get insurance? Insurance is a worse deal than the one I just described in the mystery box.
Facts.
Because insurance, neither party knows what they're going to get. At least with the mystery box, the guy who sold the mystery box knows how much he's going to get. He's going to get $50. The person who doesn't know is the one who gets the bag, right? But insurance, if you pay in every month a certain amount of money to your health insurance, you don't know how much total money you're going to give them. You're giving them, say, I don't know, say $200 a month, okay? You don't know how many months you're going to be paying. You don't know what's the total amount of money you're going to pay to that company, and they don't know what's the total amount they're going to get from you. And also, neither one of you knows what's the amount that the company is going to give to you. You don't know if you're going to get sick. You don't know if you're going to even use that health insurance. You don't know if you're going to get a single cent from them. Because you don't know the future. And even if you do get sick, and you do go to the hospital, and you do use the insurance, you don't know if they're going to cover you.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying? That's entered into a deal where neither side knows what they're going to get out of the deal. It's actually even more crazy than the mystery box example. Yet, most of us, we see the craziness in the mystery box. We don't see the craziness in the insurance because it's become normal. And a lot of us let normalization deceive us. We think that if something is normal, then that makes it acceptable. Just because something is normal doesn't mean it's in accordance with the Sharia. In a country like the United States, a huge amount of what goes on is not in compliance with the Sharia, even though it's extremely normal. And I'm not just talking about transactions either. I'm talking about even in our worship. There are people who do things in Salat normal. You see it all over the place. And it breaks their Salat. And people don't care. They think it's normal. They think it's okay because lots of people do it. And since when do we take our deen from what other people do? Our deen comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, as interpreted by the qualified scholars. That's where our deen comes from, correct? So even if everybody around you is doing something, if it goes against what Allah and His Messenger said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then that means all those people are wrong. Okay, truth is not known by what the people around you are doing. Okay, truth is known by study. You find what the scholars said, and the scholars, of course, support what they say with dalils from the religious sources. Okay. That's how you know how to proceed. And of course, the other thing is we need to learn to have tolerance of differences of opinion. Because there have been many qualified scholars, and they did not all understand the deen in the same way. Okay? So if you're following one understanding, and someone else is following another understanding, as long as both of them are legitimate methods, that's fine. We have to stop expecting everybody to do everything the same way that we do. That's just not the way the deen works. You know, there's a story in the hadith of a time Omar, radiallahu anhu, was walking and he heard one of the Sahaba, whose name is Hijja, reciting Surah Al-Furqan. And when he heard Hijja reciting Surah Al-Furqan, he was saying the surah differently than how Omar learned it. And you know, Omar was a person who didn't take no mess. He was somebody who, if he saw somebody doing something wrong, he was going to come and put a stop to it immediately. Okay? You know what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about Omar? He said, when Omar goes down one street, the shaitan goes down a different street. Okay? Doesn't mean the shaitan is afraid of Omar. It means that the shaitan knows he's not going to be successful in front of Omar. Like nobody's going to commit a sin with Omar right there. Right? So he goes down a different street because he might be able to get somebody over there to do something. Right? Omar did not take no mess. And he was about to grab Hisham out of the salat. He was so upset because of the way Hisham recited. But out of respect for the salat, he waited until he was finished. And as soon as Hisham finished the salat, Omar grabbed him by the front of his shirt here, by the neck, and started pulling him to go see the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when they arrived to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet asked Omar, what's going on? And Omar said, I heard this person reciting Surah Al-Furqan, and he wasn't saying it the way you taught me. And the Prophet said to Hisham, basically what he was doing, and Hisham said, I was reciting Surah Al-Furqan the way you taught me, O Messenger of Allah. So the Prophet told Omar to let him go, and he said, okay. He said, Hisham recite, and Hisham recited the surah the way that Omar heard him reciting it. And when he was done, the Prophet ﷺ said, this is how it was revealed to me. And Omar got a look on his face, like, ooh, you know, because now he thinks he's wrong. And the Prophet ﷺ says to Omar, recite. And Omar recited Surah Al-Furqan the way that Omar recites it. And the Prophet said, this is how it was revealed to me. And then Omar and Hisham look at each other like, oh, because they said it different ways. And the Prophet ﷺ explained that the Quran was revealed in 7 ahruf. You know, so when the angel revealed it to the Prophet ﷺ, he revealed it with variations in it. Okay, and from those variations, we get the various recitations of the Quran which we have today. We're not the first Muslims to have trouble accepting differences. You know? Omar and Hisham, and after that point, they accepted the fact that they're reciting in different things. But then not long after that, during the time when Uthman was the Khalifa, the Muslims were they were invading into the area which is now Azerbaijan. And Uthman thought to combine the army of Iraq and the army of Syria together to push into the mountains. It was going to be difficult fighting in the mountains. And when he brought the armies together, they didn't recite Quran the same way. And it led to a big problem, to the point where they almost started fighting each other. And Hudayfa, radiallahu anhu, was there, and he went to Medina to inform Uthman about what was happening. And when Uthman solved it by doing what he very famously did, he had official copies of the Mus'haf made, and he had them sent to the main centers of Islamic learning with an official reciter to teach it. And it's from here, ultimately, that we get the recitations that we know of today. So all I'm saying all this to say, we're not the first ones to have difficulty accepting differences. Okay? But this deen has differences, even in the Quran itself. When I say differences, I don't mean differences in like the pitch you recite at. I don't mean the difference between someone saying, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and then someone else saying, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. That's not what I mean by difference. I mean, the words are different, you know? One person says, Kayfa Nushizuha with a Z, and someone else says, Kayfa Nushiruha with a Ra. Like the letter is different, you know? In some cases, whole words are different. Like a word is missing from this recitation versus the other recitation. You know? Tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, and in another recitation, Tajri tahtaha al-anhar. The word min is gone. Okay, the differences in these recitations can be very noticeable. MashaAllah. And they can be shocking to a person who doesn't know what they're listening to. Okay, some of them have differences in like the rules of recitation. Hamza, for example, is well known that he has pauses before Hamzas, before the letter Hamza. You know, so in his recitation, you'll hear things like, تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. Like with a pause in the middle of the word. You know, other people will hear that and flip out. But they've never heard something like that before. Yeah, well, this is a famous recitation. You know, at some point, we as Muslims just have to admit we don't know everything. Right? There's things about the deen we don't know. You're going to see things in life that you didn't hear about before. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay? That doesn't mean it's right either, though. Like, if you see something you never heard of before, it could be completely made up and 100% wrong. But it could be 100% legitimate, but you just didn't know about it. Okay? We have to learn to go, study, learn what's legitimate, and we need to cling to what we were taught, while recognizing that what we were taught is not the only way. And if you see someone doing something different, that way may be legitimate as well. And eventually, when you get enough knowledge, you'll learn all of the ways. You know? But that takes a lot of study, more study than probably the majority of Muslims are willing to do. But it doesn't take much for you to learn the basics according to one interpretation, according to one method. It doesn't take much. I think if a person did like a weekend seminar, like one weekend, they could go over kind of quickly, but they could go over everything that an individual Muslim is obligated to do. They could do it in a weekend. And then you've learned enough to practice correctly for the rest of your life. It's not a lot. You know, but why do we not bother to learn this small amount? I don't know if it's a question of ignorance, like they don't realize they don't know it. I don't know if it's a question of arrogance, where they think that they know enough already. I don't know if it's just a question of people relying on what's normal, that whole normalization thing. They don't see anyone else going and studying obligatory knowledge, so therefore it must not be required. But all of this is important. You know, just to tie it back to the day of Arafah, we've been going to Arafah. It requires knowledge. You need to know when you need to be there. If you get there too early and leave, it won't count. If you get there too late, it won't count. You know, you got to know the time. You also got to know where Arafah is located. You know, other than that, there's not really a whole lot you need to do there. You just need to be there between a certain time frame. You know, but the rest of Hajj has a lot of rules. You know, I was going over some Hajj rules for some people who plan on going to Hajj this year. And I was telling them about Tawaf. When you walk around the Kaaba, I was telling them it's important that you stay outside of the Kaaba. You need to walk around it. You can't walk through it. You know, and you know, they kind of smile like, well, I want to go through it anyway. You know, is the door even open? Kind of thing. And then I had to explain to them what I mean when I say you can't go through it. You know, the building that's there today, that cube-looking building, is smaller than the Kaaba. The Kaaba itself, like the foundation of the original building, the old one built by Adam alayhi salam, is much larger than the current building. The building that's there right now was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail, because the original one got destroyed in the flood. They built a new Kaaba on the foundation of the old one, but the new Kaaba is significantly smaller than the foundation of the original. When you make Tawaf, you have to go outside of the foundation of the original Kaaba. And there are ways where if you're not careful, you're going to end up going through that original foundation. Such as if you go between the cube building and that little half circle, which is next to it. It's possible to walk through there, but if you walk through there, then that's not Tawaf. If you're too close to the Kaaba, you'll be over top of the foundation. You could be outside the wall of the Kaaba, but still be over top of the foundation. So you're not outside of it. You're basically inside the Kaaba. You know, they weren't aware of those things. I told them to make sure your left shoulder is pointed at the Kaaba all the time, because this is a condition for your Qur'an. And when you go there, you're going to see a lot of people. They're not keeping their left shoulder pointed at the Kaaba. They turn it and taking pictures. They facing it with their chest to take pictures. They turn their back to it to take selfies. And doing all this stuff in the middle of their Qur'an. Because they didn't learn how to make Qur'an properly. You know? This is what happens when you rely on what's normal instead of studying. It's something like Hajj, you do it so rarely, you don't know what's normal. You just gotta go there and you're gonna do what you think is right or do what you see other people doing. And again, you can't rely on what other people are doing. Because half of them are just looking to see themselves what other people are doing. You know? It's important for us to study and to practice what we learn. That way we'll be safe, inshallah, on the day of judgment. And make sure whatever you're studying, make sure it's from one of the four recognized methods. And if you have a teacher who doesn't follow a method, avoid that teacher like a plague. Avoid that teacher like a plague. And the Muslims have followed these four methods for many centuries. And when I say the Muslims, I mean all of them. All of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah follow these methods. And the very recent phenomenon for people to not follow methods. Okay? And in that should be like your sign. Okay? It's what we call, what some people might call bid'ah. You know? All the Muslims have been doing something a certain way from the time of the Salaf until now. And then just in the last 2 generations, now suddenly people want to reject what the Muslims have been doing all along and do something different. And where's that coming from? That's a rejection of the whole ummah. That person is not going to be a source of guidance. Okay? And I remind you, I'm not saying all of this because I want you to learn from me. Okay? There are 4 methods. Right? Learn from any one of them that you want. Even if you want to learn the Shafi'i method, you don't have to learn it from me. Right? Any other Shafi'i who studied anywhere else in the world, they learn the same things that I learned. Because the method is what the method is. It's consistent. It has been consistent for many centuries, and we can document that. That is where safety lies. That is what we all need to do. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I think I might have gone a little bit over. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. But I think I rambled long enough.
And this is for Eid and Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr. If you oversleep and miss, say the Eid prayer, is there a way for you to make it? Like, what's the penalty, and can you make it up? Like,
there's no penalty. So in the Shafi'i school, I'm going to be clear, this answer I'm giving you is according to the Shafi'i methods. The person who misses the Eid Salat can pray it himself. By himself or in a group, he can pray it himself. And after the prayer, it's sunnah for him to give a khutbah. Or, 2 khutbahs. We give one, you sit and give another one. It's sunnah to give a khutbah afterwards, assuming there's someone else there. Okay? Now, if you're completely by yourself and you pray the Salat by yourself, then you don't give a khutbah to nobody. But if there's someone else with you, it's sunnah to give a khutbah afterwards. And if you know how to do the Eid prayer and the Eid khutbahs, there's extra takbirs in the salats and in the khutbahs. If you know how to do it, then you do those. If you don't know how many takbirs to do, then you can just pray it like a regular 2 rakats. Okay? But your intention is that you're praying the Eid salat. Anything else? All right? Well, then let's say La ilaha illallah. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. بارك الله فيكم. I guess somebody was going to call it a then.
I can go. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala al-falah. Hayya ala al-falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La